Welcome back to another video. Today we've got a Powerbook 160 that we'll be taking a look at. I got this Powerbook from somebody local in town here. It was super cheap. It had tons of documentation with it, a case, all of the accessories. It was pretty cool, except it smelled very much like an ashtray. So after letting it air out for a bit, decided to get to work on it. So let's jump right into the video. Today we have this Powerbook 160. Picked it up locally and was told it doesn't power on. Let's give it a try. I've got the power adapter plugged in, and we'll hit the switch, which is behind the door back here. And yeah, sure enough, no power, no signs of life. So I think the first thing to check is the power adapter. Make sure we're actually getting the voltage, which should be 7.5 volts. Plug that in. Got our multimeter. Already we're on voltage. I think these are center positive. 7.73. Yeah, good enough. So we know the power adapter is good. So let's get this guy apart and see if we can see anything immediately wrong. That should free up the board. Looks like it might be stuck to this. Yeah. Ew. There is some goo. And they had glued this bottom side of the board to this plastic shielding. Yeah, so we've got some residual goo in this area, which is probably not ideal. I think these are transistors. I don't know if they're related to power delivery. I think so, because they're right by the battery connection. Can't really see where the traces go, but anyway, so these two here, this area of the board, and then this transistor has something stuck there. So I presume something must have gone into the board here, and I see some marks here as well, so I wonder if these transistors actually overheated, and that's the problem. So it looks like it's melted that to the case. Well, it's possible something got in here, dripped, caused the transistors to overheat by shorting them out, and then they melted through the plastic. Well, either way, we got to get that cleaned up before we try anything. So I don't know if these will need to be replaced or if we can just clean up what's going on here. I'm presuming that we're going to have to replace them. It looks like they did get hot because the solder also seems to have been melted off of those. All right, so I ordered some replacement Mosfets from DigiKey. They no longer make the original Mosfet, but these were recommended as a replacement. So hopefully it's close enough. I think it will be. They look like they're about the same size, so they should fit on there okay. So the first thing we need to do is get these three old ones off. I don't know how easy that's going to be with the burned up solder on there, but we will give it our best effort. Alright, so this is the board. These are where the pads were, and right in the middle here is where the pad came up. You can see that black area, that's the missing pad. So if we follow the trace, it looks like it goes around this pad and down to this via here. I don't think this trace is connected to this pad, unfortunately. Though I'm not 100% sure about that. So let's see if we can tone that out. Maybe it is. So that is this one here. And these are just tiny little vias. Not even sure I'm making good contact. Yeah, it's getting... Yeah, certainly not a direct connection between those two. Those two pads are the same. And those two pads are the same. So we can just bodge from here to here. So that shouldn't be too hard to do. Unfortunate that we have to do it. You know, sometimes it just happens on these older boards, especially when the board's damaged. Like this one was damaged by heat. You can definitely see charred remains of previous Mosfets on here. I don't know if that's going to scrape off, but it's like melted plastic. And then this pad up here, this entire thing is loose. So I don't know if that is important. You can see it's still connected, so we're going to just leave it. If we did have to bodge it, we could. It goes right up to this via here. And again, on these Powerbook boards, these vias are tiny. It's going to be really tricky, but there's a good size trace here. So if we need to scrape that away, we can. It's got to be careful not to rip the whole pad off because it'll take that trace with it. All right, so back to these two. So we're going to bodge this one to this one. All right, let me reposition the camera and we will get those new Mosfets installed and then we'll do the bodge. All right, so looking at this board some more, there is a fuse right here. This is bus fuse, 125 volts. And when I test continuity across that, I get open. There's like no continuity, so the fuse is blowing. Now it's right by the battery connector, so I presume that it doesn't have any effect on the rest of the system operating. Now I'm getting the 7 volts on all these Mosfets that I replaced that looked like they were burned out. And looked like they were burned out that were burned out 100%. So I'm going to take this fuse off, and I don't have any spare fuses, so I'm going to just short a little wire across there. You know, and it certainly wouldn't be a permanent fix, but just to see if we get any sort of different behavior. Give it some power, see what happens. Oh, well, we've got a chime now. That is certainly different than before. Open this up. And plug it in and see if we get anything on the screen. Well, the backlight's on. I don't know if you can see that. But you're getting power to the screen, which it certainly wasn't doing before. But I'm not seeing any sort of display coming to it. All right, so the next step in the journey of this Powerbook 160 is to recap the passive matrix LCD screen that's in here. So let's go ahead and take that out as the first step. If you go out to Mac 84's website, he's got a parts list for these capacitors, so you don't really need to look up the values. He's got them all labeled there nicely. So I just went ahead and took his advice and ordered what he listed there. He claims no responsibility if they're wrong, but I don't know how you could blame somebody for that anyway. I mean, it's up to you to check, but I guess we'll know if they're the right ones or the wrong ones. So we've got a bunch of capacitors here. And I ordered enough for 2 screens, even though I only have this 1 screen. But we got a 35 volt, 3.3 microfarad, 35 volt, 2.2 microfarad, and 6.3 volt, 100 microfarad. Mac 84 said that the 6.3 volt is actually originally a 6 volt part, but you can always go up on the voltage. And I think the 6 volts are hard to find or harder to find or something, so no problem there. We'll use the higher value one. So we've got our 2 big caps here, and then all of the small caps here, 3, 6, 9 of them. They're all labeled. The little ones are labeled with positive facing up for these 3, positive facing up for these 3, and for these 3, positives facing down. These ones, positives facing towards the screen. So if you're doing this and taking them all off at once, it's probably best to pay attention to that. Now, write it down, take a picture so that you know where to put them. But I've got the video here, so if I forget, I can go back. But the board is labeled, so it shouldn't ever be a problem. All right, so we got them all off. Next thing I want to do is just clean up those contacts, get rid of the capacitor goo that is all over them and all over that one chip that's next to them. All right, now the next thing we want to do is remove all of the existing solder, whatever's left of the legs from the capacitors. All right, so those are all cleaned up. All right, so those are the ones that were on the bottom. The one in the middle there was the one that was being tough. And we've got these ones here, these 2, and these 6 here. So everything's looking ready to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is hit them with some solder to tin them to get them ready for the capacitors. As I mentioned, next up, just going to tin these up really quickly. So I will apply some flux, get some solder on there, and I'll just fast forward through this part. All right, and with those tinned, we're ready to put on the replacement capacitors. So I had taken off the electrolytics and we'll be replacing them with tantalums. So one thing to remember, and I got this handy card here, electrolytics polarity band is negative, tantalum's polarity band is positive. So just make sure you're doing it right. If you get your stuff from Console 5, they give you these cards. So I've just got a bunch of these laying around from other repairs, but make sure you're doing it correctly and you won't have any problems. So what I like to do is put them all on, and then when I'm done, I just go through and double check them all to make sure that I have the polarity correctly. should be everything. So I'm just going to go through now and just test them all to make sure they're all on there securely. Yep. All right, so I think we're good. So then the next step is reassembly. So there we go. Hinges seem to work nicely. Everything's good here. So let's connect our system board back up. I'll reconnect that to the upper assembly. All right, and then we'll give it some power. All right, so we have contrast that works now, and brightness that works now. And we have a flashing question mark icon. So I'm not sure if you can get that on camera. I can't really see from this angle super well, but the screen does seem to be working. Seeing some ghosting on here, but I'm not sure what that's about. So I'm gonna flip it over, get things back together, and then let's see if we can't get this thing booting up finally. All right, and there it goes, booting up just fine.
So as you can see from the end there, kind of cut out the screen in that final shot, which is unfortunate, but we did get things fixed. So we replaced the 3 Mosfets, and we recapped the LCD screen, and that got everything going. So I think that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.